My name is Carmen Boltz. I'm a PhD student at American University, and I work on the Humanities Truck that we're currently sitting inside out here at Petworth Library. It is November 9th, 2019, and it's around midday, I don't know, 1 o'clock or something, maybe 2. And we're out here conducting oral history interviews about Petworth. So, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and then we'll jump right into the interview.
Okay, I am Buddy Moore, and I formerly lived in the Parkview neighborhood.
Okay, wonderful. And so, can you just tell me your experience? Did you grow up in Petworth, or did you, how long have you been a resident of this general area?
Okay, I grew up as a teenager in the Cardozo neighborhood. As a matter of fact, I lived directly across the street from Cardozo High School, and I attended Cardozo High School. After I was married, I moved to the Parkview neighborhood in the George Avenue Park Road area, and that's where I raised a part of my family with the second marriage.
Oh.
So that was a great experience. At the beginning, of course, unfortunately, after living in the Parkview neighborhood for maybe 2 or 3 years, the drug epidemic hit. And that sort of devastated the Parkview neighborhood for a period of time. So that was just a period in which the neighborhood didn't know whether we would be able to survive that whole drug epidemic, because there was just drug activity everywhere. And unfortunately, I feel many of the residents who lived in the Parkview neighborhood moved away. Some of them moved to Prince George's County because they just couldn't take the devastation that was taking place in the Parkview neighborhood.
Sure, that makes sense. And so what period of time, if you have years, about was this drug epidemic happening?
Yeah, I would say it began probably around 1982. And of course it lasted, it probably lasted until close to the 2000s. Yeah.
And was that when you also decided to leave Parkview, or what's been your transition from neighborhood to neighborhood?
Okay, now I lived in the Parkview neighborhood until May of last year, of 2018. And that's when I moved from Parkview up into the Tendertown area, into a senior building. I was beginning to age. I was living in a 3-bedroom home, which began to be too much for me to handle. So I had to move into a senior building, which is really great. I do, in fact, come back to the Parkview neighborhood, and I spend much time, as a matter of fact, I spend more time in the Parkview neighborhood than I do in the Tendertown neighborhood.
Oh, really?
Because I visit the Senior Wellness Center practically every day.
That's great. So in addition to the epidemic you saw happening in the 80s through the early 2000s, what other sort of changes did you see over your decades living in the Parkview neighborhood?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, again, some of the businesses moved out, and there was difficulty in shopping in the Parkview neighborhood. Many of the residents had to drive either to Virginia or to Maryland or further areas within the District of Columbia. So there were just very few places to get basic things that we needed. So that was not something that we look forward to, that is having to drive from where you live just to get the basic staples.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what caused that sort of transition? Why were businesses moving out?
Well, there was just too much violence in the neighborhood, and businesses just felt that they couldn't survive with so much negative activity going on around their particular site. So they just couldn't. And then, of course, the residents of Parkview were even afraid to go on to Georgia Avenue to shop at those businesses because fear of retaliation or fear that something would happen to them during their travels.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yes.
So, okay, those are some of the more significant changes you've seen. Well, do you have any favorite memories or experiences during your time at Parkview that you want to share?
Now, we did form an Orange Hat group, and our job was to speak with the drug dealers and just let them know that we didn't appreciate them coming into our neighborhood and causing problems. And we feel that we were successful in having them move to maybe other areas or leaving our neighborhood. So that was a plus.
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that Orange Hat group? Like, who decided to start forming that, and what were your methods, I guess, of talking with these different groups?
Yes. Well, the Orange Hat sort of group originated a number of years ago. I can't remember exactly who started the Orange Hat group, but I was somewhat familiar with their methods. Of course, the methods that I personally I formed the Orange Hat group for the Parkview neighborhood. It was what we call the police area 302 Orange Hat group. 302 was the police, that was the area that the police had designated for 302, 303, 304, and we were the area that was 302. So our group is called the PSA 302 Orange Hat group. And again, our goal was not to confront anyone. Our goal was just to educate those persons that are in the neighborhood doing negative things. We even talked with those persons hanging on the corners about getting jobs. We felt that if they wanted a job, maybe we could help them out. So we just walked the neighborhood with orange hats and just talking with some of the people, positive people, negative people. And again, we feel that we made a difference because it did sort of cut down on some of the violence. It cut down on a lot of the sort of just people hanging out on the streets. And we think that some of the residents who would have moved decided they were going to stay, and the neighborhood sort of stabilized, and then of course eventually it began to improve quite a bit, which now it's a rather comfortable neighborhood from my point of view. It is, yeah.
That was going to be my next question. So you've seen it change. You've seen the community in a bunch of different periods of transition. So if you had to describe it today, what words would you use to describe it?
Okay, it's beginning to be a neighborhood where people feel somewhat safe. They feel that they can now walk to certain businesses because businesses appear to be coming in, if not on George Avenue itself, in the sort of 14th and Irving Street area, even in the Georgia Avenue, Kansas Avenue area. So we're seeing some positive things. There's a bookstore that's come in, a number of restaurants that have come in. So we see that the neighborhood has definitely changed from what it was back in the early 80s and throughout the 90s. Yeah.
Definitely. And we spoke with some individuals at the Taste of Petworth event, and they also mentioned a lot of changes in the Petworth area over the past decade or so, yes, as a result of redevelopment and other things. And have you also noticed a lot of changes that have come from redevelopment and even gentrification in this area?
Yes. Now, of course, the fear is that there will be too much gentrification. That's sort of the fear at this time, but hopefully things will stabilize, especially if housing prices were to stabilize. More people will be able to afford to stay where they are or bring people in who ordinarily could not afford the high rents and the high prices of some homes for sale. Now, I see a great positive change in the Petworth area and in the Parkview area over the past 3, 4, 5 years.
That's great. So it's about finding that kind of perfect balance, right?
Yes.
Like the improvements and new businesses and stuff coming in, but also no displacement as a result of
That's
all
great.
of that.
Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about that. I want to be respectful of your time, so we'll close with this question. Is there anything else you would like to share for the record during this interview today about your life or your experience in Parkview, Petworth, anything at all?
No, just that the main thing that I'd like to state is that persons who've lived it for quite a while, I just want to encourage them to hang on. I think there's help on the way when it comes to housing. I think the mayor and the city council are beginning to come together to figure out what can they do to make sure that persons who live in this area for quite a while are able to stay and can attract persons who may not have been able to purchase a home in the past, they may be able to come in there and purchase a home, because the mayor and the council will have the ability to make some type of regulations or pass some legislation that will sort of stabilize the housing market, both in sale and rental.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that on camera here, and thank you for your time today. I'll let you head off to your next meeting, but it's so nice to talk to you.
All right, thank you very much. Nice talking to you.